So I talked about in my last video why the Feds will be forced to pivot, and in doing so we may have 10 or 20x inflation before the Feds can actually bring back sound money, because mathematically that's all we can afford before we can. Sound money is expensive. If you want to bring interest rates up to inflation, where inflation is, it will cost the federal government a good percentage of our GDP, and historically our debt service, the most we could comfortably afford was 1 to 2% of our GDP. And so if we want to pay 10% interest rates, we better have a national debt that's only 5 to 10% of our GDP. And unless we do something really outrageous, the only way to get a national debt down to that level is to pivot and to inflate it away. And historically, history bears it out. Now, I got a comment on what I would recommend as a way to hedge against that, what I think about precious metals. Well, I don't think that gold and silver alone are a safety play anymore. It's way too manipulated. Not to mention, there's no telling what the future will hold for gold and silver. I think if it's on the periodic table, you better hoard some of it. So recently I've been going on a buying spree of every metal on the periodic table that is currently undervalued. I like bismuth and indium especially. They are way undervalued compared to the high points. Not to mention I'm making a lot of art with my bismuth and already turning a profit selling some of that art, right? And I would recommend also some of the rare earth metals, like basically on the separate rows on the periodic table, europium, samarium, neodymium. A lot of those are used in semiconductors. I'd obviously recommend platinum. A lot of that is used in the electric car, although platinum is also used in catalytic converters, which will definitely go away when we have electric cars. Now, I don't think electric cars are going to take over. I actually think it's the nuclear RTG powered cars, and that's where bismuth also comes into play. But also potentially thorium or depleted uranium, if you can safely keep that around. I'd recommend some of that physically, obviously. I wouldn't recommend paper stuff if you're going to go the route of the periodic table. But I suspect there will come a day when entire groups on the periodic table will no longer be in reach of the majority of people. Right? There was a time when palladium, platinum, osmium, iridium were garbage. Right? They were mining products of other things, and I suspect someday we may look at bismuth. Oh my God, I can't believe my grandparents had so much bismuth to play with. They literally made crystals out of them. They were pouring them into jewelry. And I really do see that day coming. In fact, I'm going to use bismuth for my wedding jewelry, my solosexual wedding jewelry, that is, because it's very symbolic. I want my wedding jewelry to symbolize that even after, 19 billion years, there's always room for change, right? Bismuth decays with a half-life of 19 billion years into, it becomes rat poison, unfortunately. But that rat poison might also be radioactive. It's observationally stable, but we don't know yet. And if it is, it could become gold. So that's kind of exciting news for me, too. Maybe someday, just before I die, I'll launch that bismuth somewhere where it will boomerang around and become gold for my afterlife, right?